So we're in Guangzhou, China, which is a lot of fun. The BloggerCon's going on here. Who are you?
Robert, I'm Lucas Englehardt. I'm from BloggerInsight, a startup that just launched here at BloggerCon yesterday.
Very cool. And what does it do?
So BloggerInsight is basically a dynamic research community consisting of expert Chinese bloggers. And we cover high tech in China, so either for foreign companies or Chinese companies looking for market entry, strategic marketing, product reviews, product development feedback, cover all those things.
So you're going to be like the TechCrunch of China?
I don't know the TechCrunch necessarily, but we hope to really provide foreign companies or Chinese companies with English language reports to kind of give them the inside scoop. So these bloggers are here, they're young Chinese, they're either working in the high-tech industry or they're following it closely, and so we really think they have the knowledge.
You should explain who you are and what you work in, because I met you in
That's right.
Web2 Asia, right? Do you work with Web2 Asia?
We do work with Web2 Asia. They're our partner companies.
And what is Web2 Asia, and how does that fit in, and why do you guys have a strategic advantage going forward?
Okay, yeah, Web2 Asia is a kind of a market expansion partner. So for foreign companies looking to enter China, instead of having to take care of all the details themselves, doing licensing and company registration and all that, they take care of it for them. And so we're working with them to help provide research for those companies, but we also work with individual clients.
Yeah.
I guess because China is such a young, growing economy and developing so quickly, there's a lot of opportunity for high information and high quality people. It's hard to find both of those here.
Yeah. Now, are you going to write in English or in Chinese?
The final report is in English. We translate it from Chinese. So basically how it works is we work with a company to develop a personalized case study. So it targets exactly what they want. And then that's pitched to the bloggers, and they're targeted to them based on their expertise. And so they can respond. And if their answers are, they can rate each other's answers, and if their answers are picked to be used in the report, they earn some money. So it's a way for us to try to help support the Chinese bloggers. Awesome. But then the answers are translated to Chinese, and there's some additional analysis done to complete the final report.
Very cool. Since you're here in, you live in Shanghai, right?
That's right. Yep.
And you're seeing a lot of startups, and a lot of startups that, it seems to me we're at a tipping point right now in China where most of the stuff that's happened before has been cloning American companies. I've seen Facebook and YouTube and Google clones here, but it seems like there's a new industry happening that they're coming out with their own stuff. Does that match what you're seeing?
I agree with that completely. I think that there has been a lot of cloning, the exact copycats, right? You look in the Facebook clones, they're the same color scheme and everything. But then they're beginning to diversify. And even the clones themselves are also often innovating faster than the original. So you see that most of the large foreign companies aren't the #1 leader here, the Google, the eBay, the Facebook. And I think that's going to continue to be the case. Some of these companies are innovating in terms of micropayments, something very interesting that hasn't taken off maybe in the US or Europe, but here has.
Explain why, because I think credit cards here aren't used by Chinese citizens as much as in, I mean, I use them to buy coffee in the morning, right? I use my Visa card, but which is almost like a micropayment, right? $2 a cup of coffee, you put on your credit card.
Sure.
But here, there's not that culture of using a credit card that way, right?
Right. I mean, the Chinese are much more of savers. So I'm American, and we have a culture, obviously, of spend, spend, spend. And the Chinese save a lot. The credit cards are beginning to make a push, Visa here with the Olympics and everything, but still a majority of consumers don't have credit cards. So when you're buying things online or e-commerce, that all has to be cash on delivery. That's become quite advanced. Or also QQ and Tencent. QQ is the #1 instant messenger client here in China, blows away the competition. And They're profitable. It's going to be $1 billion a year for them this year, and that's all based on micropayments, buying icons, to having virtual pets, all that stuff. The Chinese like to show off in the online world, and so if you can dress your aviator up, that's great. They like that.
Wow. So there's a whole virtual goods economy here, which is much more advanced than probably over in the United States. I mean, I don't play like Second Life, so my son, when he was on Second Life, does buy stuff, but here it's part of the culture. Sure. Much more than over in the United States.
Yeah, you know, I think that it'll be interesting to see if some of the Western startups begin copying the Chinese and some of these innovations.
Hey, that would be fair turnaround.
Right, yeah.
Copy the great ideas that are happening over in China too. You know?
I mean, I think that's how innovation works. To copy something is almost, and to make it work and localize it is very difficult.
Yeah.
I think we've seen that a lot of foreigners think they can come into China and just treat it like one large market. China itself is a completely unique market, but it's also not just one. There's many different small microcosms in different markets, the different tier cities, the north versus the south, you know, the different socioeconomic levels. They're all unique, and they all need to be addressed in that way.
Yeah. Do you think one of the trends I'm watching for is the growth of Chinese brands outside of China? You know, that I'm sensing that China's really close to building some worldwide brands. You know, being here in China, you see Kentucky Fried Chickens and Starbucks and McDonald's and Chevy cars, right, and Buicks. And you see all these American brands that have come into China, but I'm sensing that like Lenovo is a Chinese brand. Sure. That's becoming a global brand. I'm sensing that we're going to see a lot more of that.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I mean, right now there's only a couple of big ones that most people know: Lenovo, Haier, and I think that that's going to continue. In fact, I think with the downturn of the American economy, the Chinese currency becoming stronger, you might see these large Chinese companies, because they already have the manufacturing capabilities, just going out and buying whole brands and buying the distribution. And so they will be, in the end, they'll be the owners of that. I mean, they have trillions of US dollars in reserves, they have lots of money to spend, and so at the end of this recession, or whatever it is, the Chinese, I think, are going to be in a very good position.
Yeah. And it's pretty clear when you're here how fast everything's changing. I mean, now we've seen like Las Vegas grow out of the desert, but it grew out of the desert over 50 years. So
I've been living in Shanghai full time for a little over the last 2 years. And when I went back for the first time, after being away for 2 years, I was surprised to see that many places in the US were the same. But having been gone, when I returned to Shanghai after 3 weeks, I felt there was more change there in 3 weeks than New York or Boston had seen in the last 2 years. I mean, it's just phenomenal. When you want to go out to eat, you call up a restaurant not to make a reservation, but to make sure it's still there, that they haven't moved or torn it down for construction.
Yeah.
And so it's a fast market, and I think that going back to the market research aspect, in the West, there's a lot of open source information, and it's easy to, especially if you're a native speaker. But here, even if you are a native Chinese speaker, the information isn't online, it's all in people's heads. And so we're trying to build that network and connect that information, and then specifically for people who aren't Chinese speakers to deliver that in English.
Are there a couple companies that you think Americans should watch and pay attention to?
Sure, a lot of the big companies here that just are unknown in the West. I mentioned Tencent, which owns QQ, a huge company that right now they're just beginning to compete in the Southeast Asia, but they own China, really, in terms of micropayments, in terms of the online messenger, which is turning into social networking. Really, social networking as it is in the US. Facebook, MySpace hasn't taken off yet. There's some other companies which I think are doing maybe the Sina and some of these large portals, which are really, they own the users and they own those relationships and they own the content. And so it'll be interesting to see if they remain only China players or if they decide they want to compete internationally. I think that going forward, to compete wherever you are in the international markets, to win locally, you have to compete internationally. But also, you have to understand that the Chinese consumers, and that's incredibly difficult. You have to really constantly feed them new information and new products to keep them interested.
Very cool. Well, thank you so much.
Thanks a lot, Raj. It was a pleasure.